Some Sundays it's a lot harder to sing praise to, O Christ, after we read the gospel, isn't it? That's a difficult gospel text, and one that I don't typically like to preach on because it's Jesus talking to the chief priest and the leaders, and he's talking about them to them. And so what does that mean for us today? I don't know that it has a lot of meaning for us today, although I do believe that we live in a time where if you look hard enough, or I guess if you don't look at all, you would believe that God is away from us, that God has left and gone to another country. I know that there's times in our lives where we look around and say, where could God be in the midst of this? Why is God not here? Why is God not doing something? But I don't think that happens overnight. I think it takes a lifetime or years of walking away from God before a random act of violence or terrorism or cancer or unemployment or loneliness comes around where we look and say, well, where is God? Why isn't God here? But the realization and the truth is God doesn't go on vacation. Our God is not a God of vacations. God is always here. And the times in our lives when we look and say, where is God? I cannot feel God's presence. I cannot see God. The truth is only one of us has moved. And we may not be able to see God because we haven't been walking with God, but instead we've been walking the other direction. And I think if we want to work on our relationship with God, we can do that in 3 ways. And we can start today. So that when those things happen to us, we know that God is with us. I'm overcome with humility whenever I visit our friend Doug Veazey, who's going through cancer treatments and who is completely at peace because he knows God is with him. And what a true testament to faith that is. How can we have that type of faith? I think the first thing we can do is we can change our attitude. Something small, something easy. I have been a pastor now for just a little over 4 years, which means for a little over 4 years, I've been actually having a retirement account that's been contributed to. And every couple of months, I'll pull it up and see what my investments are doing and see the growth in the stocks, and I get excited. And I start to do math and think, well, in 10 years, if it goes at this rate, this is how much it can be, and in 30 years, and then I think to myself, wow, if I can just make it to 30 years, I'll have this much money, and I look forward to 30 years down the road when I can retire and play golf every day and all that. But then I start to think, wow, I've just wished away 30 years of my life. I think we get in this cycle of mundane life. And we stop realizing how special each moment is. My dog Waylon, who you've probably all heard about before, the golden retriever, the coolest dog on the face of the earth. I know your dogs are cool, but they're probably as cool as Waylon. They're just not cooler, I can say that though. Waylon goes on a lot of walks. He gets walked probably usually once or twice a day, and mostly it's Michelle walking him. But occasionally I get to go because I'm awake when she walks him. And what I find as we're walking is that Waylon probably goes on 500 walks a year. And it's the same place every time. But he's always sniffing different places. He's always stopping at different places. He loves to stop and roll over, and it's always a different place. And he likes to do his business in different places. And for him, he may not go, he goes on 500 walks a year, but he never goes on the same walk twice. He goes on 500 different walks every year, even though it's the same route. Where for you and I, we would think, we go on the same walk 500 times a year, right? Waylon appreciates every walk he goes on, and he learns something new about the route every time he goes. Like, wow, that's powerful. It's a powerful reminder to me that every day we get is a gift. And every minute we have on this earth to spend with the people around us is a miracle. It's a reason to be grateful. every Sunday morning I get to stand here and be with you is such a privilege. And we shouldn't take anything for granted at all. When we start taking things for granted, when we stop being grateful for the things that we have, we wander away from God. And if we change our attitude about the things we have and realize that God has given them to us, we will start to get closer and closer and closer back to God. Change our attitude. I think we need to change our expectations. I don't know about you, but I don't wake up in the morning expecting to encounter God today. When in reality, there are a number of ways in which we can encounter God every day. 10 years ago, not quite 10 years ago, summer of 2007, I was a program director at a camp up in northern Michigan called Mishaluka. It's like 100 acres and it's beautiful. It's in the middle of nowhere, a bunch of lakes and ponds and just a great place. And thousands of kids would come there every summer and encounter God in new ways, and we'd have festivals, we'd have retreats, just a great place. Well, the camping industry is one that's come on hard financial times. Kids aren't going to camp as much because they have baseball camp and basketball camp and football camp and dance camp and Boy Scout camp and all those other camps, and there's just not enough room for everybody to go to confirmation camp in their summer schedules anymore. And so there's 2 camps in Michigan. I've worked at both of them. I love both of them. But the Lutheran Living Waters Ministries in Michigan decided they need to sell Mishaluka, this 100-acre camp. And they sent this letter out saying, we're going to put this camp up for sale. And on Facebook, it just kind of blew up. And all these people that used to work there and all the kids that used to go there that are now on Facebook are so angry and so upset because they experienced God on this piece of land through relationships, through song, through all these different things. And they're so upset that they're selling this piece of land because on that piece of land, when they go there, they expect to encounter God. But I say, why can't you encounter God the same way? Where you live, where you work, where you worship. Mishaluka is just a piece of land. God is everywhere. Why can't we expect to encounter God every day? And if we expect to encounter God, we will. Pat and Cecil Howard, for my birthday, they gave me a present, which is they were on vacation, and they stopped along the side of the road, and they saw, was it the ocean? With the sun setting, and just, it wasn't quite setting, but it was coming off the ocean. The ocean was calm, and they snapped a picture. And they said, we have to give Pastor Nick a copy of this. Because in the middle of their vacation, while driving down the road, they saw something, and they experienced God. Because they expect to experience God in their daily lives. If we expect it, it'll happen. And finally, I think we need to change our priorities. All of us. Me, number one. I went to Lindsay, went to a 12 and under girls rec league softball game this week, and it was great. And Amelia, you did great. The best catcher on the team, it was great. But there was a pitcher on her team, and was it her dad who's sitting behind with a radar gun clocking the girl's pitch? Every pitch. How fast this 12-year-old girl is throwing a softball. And I laughed. I laughed not because, at first I laughed, well, that's kind of silly, but then I realized, it's much bigger than just this game right here. It's our culture. We live in a culture where that places priority on being the best, on being better than other people. That's what sports is about. It's about competing. It's about beating the guy or girl that you're going against, and it's just what's important to us. I was devastated when the Detroit Tigers blew the 3-run lead in the bottom of the 8th on Friday night, because I want my team to be the best. I want them to win the World Series, and it looks like the Kansas City Royals might win it. It's just part of our culture. It's who we are. But when you read what Paul writes today in Philippians, Paul writes, if anybody had reason to boast about the things they've done, it was me. As far as the righteousness, and Jews used to compete about who was the most righteous, Paul was the most righteous. circumcised on the 8th day, a Jew among Jews. I knew what I needed to know. I did what I needed to do. That was my priority. But let me tell you something. Now I consider it all rubbish, because all I want to know is Christ. I throw all that other stuff away, and my priority each and every day is knowing Christ. And if we all woke up with that same priority, what a different world we live in, and what a different life we would live. God does not go on vacations, but is always waiting and welcoming us when we return home. Amen.